सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The India-Canada relationship, as we know, has gone into a tailspin. We have anticipated this, we've been tracking this. As to date, we have done at least 3 full episodes of Cut The Clutter to record this worsening of this situation over 3 years. So this actually came to a head during the farmers' movement. It started with Justin Trudeau issuing a statement in support of the farmers' agitation. Right now, he's complaining about India interfering in his country's internal affairs. But you know what? When the Prime Minister of a democracy, that too one that far away and a friendly country, comments on an agitation happening on the ground by the farmers of yet another country, that I suppose in the Canadian self-righteous way of doing things is not foreign interference. Nevertheless, that is something that complicated things. Before that, we had also had the disastrous visit by Justin Trudeau to India. It was more like a personal visit. To me, it looked like an election campaign because he went to Gujarat, he went to Punjab. These are states from where a lot of the immigrants or his voters in Canada come from. But that visit went all wrong, as we know, from day one. And ultimately, it led to a lot of bad blood. His defense minister had come in earlier, Harjit Sajjan, the chief minister of Punjab then, Amrinder Singh refused to meet him, saying that he's linked with radicals or what is sometimes loosely called Khalistanis. That is not my preferred expression. In fact, if you read ThePrint and if you read my writings also, I don't particularly use that word because I think that takes this mix of religious radicalism plus gangsterism plus human trafficking plus many other things that get tied within, and we'll talk about some of that as we go ahead, to call that as a kind of national movement for creating another nation. I think that is just a cover, that is just camouflage for all of this other illegal activity. Nevertheless, these are preferences. So then, in fact, some complications had arisen because also at one of his banquets, among the invitees, in that list of invitees, sharp eyes in India and also in Canadian media noticed, was a man called Jaspal Atwal. Now, Jaspal Atwal was a member, or formerly a member, as he said, of International Sikh Youth Federation. He wasn't quite qualified to be youth anymore. He was probably in his 60s by now, I don't know for sure, but ISYF, formerly ISYF leader. ISYF, by the way, is a banned organization in India and has also been acknowledged as such, as being not a nice organization by the Canadians, and I will come to that. In spite of that, he was invited to this dinner. This was a Canadian dinner. When the news came out, he was disinvited. But by that time, the damage was done. Now, what was wrong with him? Because Jaspal Atwal had been convicted earlier for the murderous attempt on a Punjab minister, an Akali minister from Punjab who was visiting Canada. So he had been caught and he had been convicted. By this time he was freed, and as part of Modi government's and successive Indian government's policy to calm things down, to dial down the tension level among the Sikh expatriate community or Sikh diaspora, because terrorism in Punjab ended 3 decades back. In 1993, it ended with a finality. Separatist terrorism, separatist militancy, insurgency, you can choose to call it what you want, but that ended in Punjab 30 years back. So as that ended, everybody must get some of the peace dividend. So as part of the peace dividend, successive governments, including the Narendra Modi government, but I would say especially the Narendra Modi government, because they really went out of their ways at that point to reach out to the Sikh community. Remember, Akalis were their allies as well. Until 2019-20, Akalis were allies of the BJP. So travel bans on a lot of these Sikhs who are foreign citizens or who were living overseas, that travel ban was lifted even if they had been involved in criminal activities earlier for which they might have undergone trial and been acquitted, or where they might have served their sentences. And that's how Jaspal Atwal also got his visa to come to India, or he was able to come to India because the ban on him had been lifted. Now he landed up in the list of invitees to Trudeau's dinner, and that caused a big controversy. He was disinvited. The visit was completely fouled up. In fact, later, Trudeau said in Canada, this was a trip to end all trips. But even that trip was rescued in the end by a joint statement or a kind of framework that the two countries issued. It was called Framework for Cooperating on Countering Terrorism and Violent Extremism. I will come to that. Now that was 2018. Then came the farm movement. First of all, 2018, things worsened on Trudeau's visit because he also got very bad press. He also sort of mocked the intelligence of the Indians by turning up in their sort of Manevar style clothing everywhere, pretending to be a Punjabi or Indian, doing bhangra here and there. It was a bit of a joke. It was also trivializing both his prime ministership and also India and Indian cultures in a way, because it's one thing to go respect the culture, say I'm part of it, but it's quite another to make that the centerpiece of your visit. Nevertheless, that was a bit of opinion, so I slipped it in. Pardon me for that. Now, since then, things have gone downhill much more steeply. In that joint statement, I told you this was a joint statement that the two countries issued after the meeting, after a disastrous visit and all the controversies. He and the Indian Prime Minister met. The first part of his visit was private. The last part was the business end. When they had meetings, the two Prime Ministers met and then they issued a statement, and that has Framework for Cooperating on Countering Terrorism and Violent Extremism, dated 23rd February 2018. And this said, and I read the exact line for you, it says, and I quote, "They committed to work together to neutralize the threats emanating from terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Haqqani Network, LET, that's Lashkar-e-Taiba, JEM, that is Jaish-e-Mohammed." So far so good. So Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Haqqani Network, LET, JEM, so far so good. Then it goes on to say Babbar Khalsa International and the International Sikh Youth Federation. Now even at that point in a Cut the Clutter, I had taken notice of this, saying that this is a step forward. This is definitely something that will build confidence between two countries. This is a step forward, and this just shows that the two countries are willing and keen to repair the relationship. And I will also share with you a story then from the Times of India, which noted that it was a first. In fact, the headline in the story is, "In a first, Canada calls for action against Sikh terror groups in joint document with India." This had happened never before. So just when we thought things were getting better between Canada and India, came the farm agitation. Farm agitation, as we know, the most visible face in the farm agitation was that of the Sikh farmers and many Sikh organizations. They had wide support from overseas Sikhs, particularly in Canada. And in a while, it became quite evident and inspirationally, morally, politically, financially, the support base of the farm movement coming out of Punjab was not in Punjab, but it was in Canada. And then the Sikh radical groups or the Sikh separatist groups started talking about it. They started giving political meaning to it. At that point, Trudeau issued a political statement supporting the farm agitation, and that really made India angry. And it's not just that I'm on the side of my country. Even if you look at it purely clinically and purely editorially, there is simply no justification. There is simply no justification for this, because this was a domestic political, or you can say political, economic, agrarian protest. It had nothing to do with Canada, except for the fact that a large number of people from the same community, which made the bulwark of these protests, are immigrants in Canada. By the way, Indian immigrants in Canada are just about 3% of Canada's population, maybe a bit more than 3%. Say about 4% if you count also NRIs and others. But if you just look at voters, not more than 4%. And the last data we have available with us is 2021. So maybe by this time, maybe exactly 4% or thereabouts. Of that, about 40% are Sikhs. Now, those Sikhs, you might say, all right, so 2% of Canada's population or electorate, what is the big deal? Why do they have such a big weight? So, in one of the episodes of Cut The Clutter, which I reshared yesterday, and I'm sorry I missed 2 episodes of Cut The Clutter because I was traveling, I was in interesting places, mostly vacation, and I will give you some evidence towards the end of this episode. So please wait for that. But the fact is that those voters mostly vote for Trudeau. They used to vote for Trudeau's father earlier, Pierre Trudeau, who in 1982 was also lectured, I would like to say, but he had also heard pleas, if that is what the Canadians would prefer, from Mrs. Gandhi in 1982 to control Sikh radicalism in his country. He didn't listen, just as the son is not listening now, and that led to the bombing of Kanishka, the Air India Jumbo in 1985. That story we told you and retold you in the episode that we rebroadcast yesterday. Now, Canada is reaching the same kind of situation because the Sikh community is like a solid vote bank for Trudeau. Trudeau doesn't have a majority of his own. He also is in power with the support of another party, NDP, New Democratic Party, founded and led by another Sikh, that is Jagmeet Singh, and Jagmeet Singh has publicly given support to Khalistan or so-called Khalistan referendum. He hasn't said I support a separate Khalistan and all that, but he said things like that these are everybody's fundamental right, and that's according to international law. It's the same as saying I support the so-called Khalistan referendum. So his party's support is critical to the survival of Trudeau's government. And if Trudeau loses power right now, a fresh election would be very, very, very challenging for him. That's why he has to protect his power. And that is one of the reasons he's been so sharp in his actions and reactions. In fact, so sharp, Manvendra Singh, my former colleague, now from the Congress party, previously also from the BJP, also an officer in Territorial Army in the Special Forces. In fact, he's written a wonderful piece for us, which once it's published, we'll share with you. You will see a link with the description of this episode of Cut the Clutter also. He points out that which dignified country mentions the name of a diplomat they are expelling, and a diplomat they are expelling for being the head of the intelligence section in a friendly country's embassy. Once you make those names public, you are exposing that person, the person's family, to a lifelong threat, right? These things are not done like this. These things, if at all you are aggravated by somebody's presence, you pick up the phone, you talk to the High Commissioner, maybe you talk to the government here and say, listen, we are not happy with this person. Can you please withdraw the person, right? In spite of making a big shosha and drama in your parliament and elsewhere. So that is the limit. That is the Lakshman Rekha that Trudeau and his government have crossed now, because they also have to please their domestic constituency, that being the Sikhs, immigrant Sikhs. Now, how powerful are the immigrant Sikhs? I will give you an example. Now, 2018 for the first time, December 2018. So, just as 2018 is ended, remember 2018 February is when Trudeau comes on his disastrous visit to Delhi, and he and Narendra Modi signed that joint statement in which they mentioned Babbar Khalsa International and the International Sikh Youth Federation. They bring in Sikh extremism and Sikh radical threat there and define them specifically as terrorist organizations. In the same year, because it does look like Trudeau is seeing the light, unlike his father ever did, in 2018 December, Canadian government produced its annual, and I quote, the title of the report is Annual Public Report on the Terrorist Threat to Canada. In this report, for the first time in their history, they mentioned Sikh extremism and also Khalistan once, right? It was the first time, and immediately there were protests from the Sikh community. But once again, all of us in India noted this and said, look, this Canada under Trudeau is now waking up. They are a modern country. They are an Indian ally, just as the US is an Indian ally, Australia, Japan, all of us are coming together. Canada is a part of the same alliance, and Canadians also now are being more realistic and more fair on this. But these hopes, this optimism did not last long. By Baisakhi the coming year, Baisakhi, as you know, is 13th April. By Baisakhi Day, just on the eve of Baisakhi, which you also know is a festival especially for many communities in India, but also especially for Punjabis and Sikhs, by Baisakhi Eve, in that report, they had deleted those terms relating to Sikh extremism and Khalistan. Those had been deleted, and everybody got the message that the Sikh lobby, the radical Sikh lobby in Canada, is so powerful that even if this government, Trudeau government, dared to put this in their own annual public report on the terrorist threat to Canada, they can also, quote unquote, persuade them to withdraw this. After that, of course, came the farmers movement and a couple of other things. And then in March 2022, after a fresh election in Canada, Trudeau fell short of majority and he signed up an alliance with Jagmeet Singh's new Democratic Party. And once that happened, his politics completely changed. His political compulsions grew because now this became a question of the survival of this government rather than becoming more realistic and more pragmatic vis-a-vis India and his country's larger interest in partnership with another major country and economy in which a lot of the Canadians have very large investments. In fact, Canadian pension funds are amongst the biggest investors in Indian bonds, and many other Canadian funds, including, for example, Fairfax, have invested really big money in Indian companies, respectable Indian companies like IIFL, so on and so forth, many of them. So Canadians have a big economic stake in India, although trade between the two countries is quite modest still, quite modest in terms of the potential they have. Now, who's the man behind the trouble? Now, the man behind the trouble, you see his picture, is Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was just 46 years old, but he earned his fame or infamy very early in life. So he escaped from Punjab, say 1997 or so, again in a manner that many escape from Punjab to Canada, that is only partly legal, then they are declared illegal. Then, like many others, he married a woman in Canada who said, I'm sponsoring him. Even then citizenship was denied. So he got his citizenship much later, I think in 2014, but he stayed on in Canada, that being the system there. In 2007, while he was still there, he had already become part of the radical group there. And what was he up to? Right now, if you see his pictures, he was like a religious man because he was the chief of the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara Sahib in Surrey, right? And Brampton, Surrey, these are areas with a large Sikh population. If there are about 8 lakh Sikhs in Canada who are voters or whose families are voters, of the 8 lakh Sikhs, about 1/5 live in Brampton area. So there he became the head of a Gurdwara. So he does look like he's a pious, holy person, but see this other picture of his. That other picture of his, it's a little video as I speak. You will see that bit of the video. Now what is he doing in that video? He is obviously firing assault rifles in the air generally or at some target, doing target practice, at least I can see if he's shooting straight, but he's shooting in the air. What is he doing? Is he practicing shooting partridges? Obviously, is not. Nobody shoots partridges with an AK-47 or an assault rifle. He is trying to show off with his people, if not running a camp for terrorists. Where is it happening? It is happening in Canada. So that is the kind of man. I'm not saying anything justifies him being killed without trial by anybody. Least of all by any foreign power. And right now we haven't seen any evidence at all. Canadians have talked about this, but even in his parliament statement, Justin Trudeau did not say credible evidence. He said credible allegations. So nobody has seen any evidence. All I'm saying is he wasn't a nice, pious guy just running his Gurdwara. He's somebody who is part of some kind of armed training and some kind of lethal armed training. And he's been issuing statements. He's been in the forefront of the protests outside Indian consulate, etc. But in 2007, in Shingar Talkies, Shingar Cinema in Ludhiana, a Bhojpuri film was being shown, Janam Janam Ke Saath. In that film, as people came in after the interval, the date was October 14, 2007. A big, powerful blast took place, killing 6 people and injuring 37. For that blast, 4 persons were arrested in Punjab But Nijjar was named as the key conspirator based on the statement of these four who said that they had been inspired, paid for, etc., etc. They were given the plan by Nijjar. So that is how Nijjar was added in that FIR, and later by 2016 an Interpol red corner notice had been issued naming him as one of the suspects in this case. Then his name was also among the list of the 10 wanted men, and you will see the list on your screens. 10 wanted men that Amrinder Singh gave to Trudeau when Trudeau came on his famous or infamous visit in 2018. In Surrey, the police put him under house arrest in 2018 based on these notices and these demands, but that was only temporary. Soon enough, they lifted the house arrest, saying that they don't have credible evidence. Then NIA put him among their most wanted terror suspects and put a price of 10 lakh rupees on him. He was also named in other FIRs in connection with farm protests. His partner, and now I find in a lot of the press, particularly a lot of the Western press, he's introduced as his lawyer. That is Patwant Singh Pannu. He's a familiar face for us. He's been making these big calls for Khalistan, for balkanization of India. In fact, in one of his later statements, and that speech he gave while Trudeau was in Delhi, he actually threatened Narendra Modi and Amit Shah without using the word assassination. Hum aapka ant kar denge. Now, obviously, if you ask him tomorrow, he'll say, I meant political ant. But if you see his tone and his method, he's threatening something much more dire than a political end. And he's also saying, we will balkanize India. So that guy, that man is sometimes introduced, particularly in the Western press, as Nijjar's lawyer. He is the prime mover of the so-called referendum, which is taking place only among those Sikhs who hold foreign citizenships, mostly Canadian citizenships. Now, he runs Sikhs for Justice, of which Nijjar was a member, but Nijjar was also the self-styled chief of what is called as Khalistan Tiger Force. There are lots of such organizations called Sikh this, Khalistan that, Bhindranwale this, Bhindranwale that. There are many, many, many organizations. So remember, when you have so many organizations and a lot of easy money, the money mostly comes from the ISI. I don't think at this point any Western powers are willing to give money to any radicals operating in India. So money almost entirely comes from Pakistan. But that is such easy money that rivalries do develop amongst these groups. And then there is intermixing of these radical groups and gangsters from Punjab. I will come to that in just a minute because that's become a very complicated situation. It was in this rising maelstrom, if I may call it, that Nijjar got assassinated. He got assassinated while he was in a pickup truck coming back to his home in the Gurdwara. He was killed by two men who looked sort of heavy set. They were masked. They then got away in a vehicle being driven by a third person. So there were three men involved in this. So far, the Canadian police has neither found them, nor named them, nor given any indications as to who they were. So those three got away. This also became one of a series of incidents that happened involving radical Sikh personalities. Famous or infamous, you can choose depending on your predilections. So-called Khalistan Commando Force Chief. I told you these organizations have names or acronyms beginning either with Khalistan or Sikh or Bhindranwale. So this was Khalistan Commando Force. This is an old organization. This is an organization I have known since I used to be a reporter covering Punjab until the early 90s. And Paramjit Singh Panjwad was very well known even then and among the most wanted men. He escaped from India to Pakistan and had been there since. In fact, his name was among those on the list of those that L.K. Advani handed over to the Pakistanis just as Op Parakram had begun. And Musharraf had also said कि उन्होंने हमें लिस्ट दी है, हम देखेंगे, हमने उनको asylum तो दिया हुआ नहीं है, हमें मिलेंगे तो हम भेज देंगे, right? So he didn't say that they are not there. So Paramjit Singh Panjwad was there and had been there for a long time. He had also taken an alias, Malik Sardar Singh. So he was assassinated. He was assassinated outside his home by two unidentified gunmen while he was taking a walk. Now, all right, nobody's figured out who those men were, but the fact is that established that a much wanted radical terrorist from India, Paramjit Singh Panjwad, was living in Lahore and had a home there. So he was killed there. Then Avtar Singh Khanda, one other organization with name beginning with Khalistan Liberation Force. Avtar Singh Khanda. Avtar Singh Khanda was admitted to hospital in London where he had been living. He seemed some kind of a liver and kidney breakdown. He did not recover. He wasn't that old, but he died. Now he died, there was a lot of buzz that maybe it was some kind of an operation or he was assassinated by a rival gang. None of us figured it out. Also, although the British authorities, I must say in fairness, the British authorities said that this was a natural death. Yet again in November last year, a man called Harinder Singh Sandhu alias Rinda, he was held responsible or he was named for the RPG attack on the Punjab Police Intelligence Headquarters in Mohali. That was soon after the new Aam Aadmi Party government came into power. That had caused quite a sensation and I had also recorded a Cut The Clutter episode on that. I will share a link with you. Now, once again, reports came. By this time, I would quite believe this news, although there is no firm substantiation. But it does look like he had escaped to Pakistan and he was killed there again in mysterious circumstances. So the Nijjar killing happened generally in this period and that's how it became that much easier to build conspiracy theories and that's how the Canadians have acted, basically not blaming directly but insinuating that the Indian intelligence agencies were involved in this Nijjar's assassination or murder in their country. They don't care, obviously they can't talk about what might have happened elsewhere, but they are saying if somebody carried out an assassination of a citizen of our country on our soil, it's a violation of our sovereignty. Now, while this is happening, it's not as if Government of India is dialing down this tension level now, because Government of India has issued a series of statements. Those statements you've seen on this. There was one statement issued while Trudeau was here, and some statements have been issued after Trudeau's statements in his parliament. So the latest thing that's come out now is a list today, and you will see this series of tweets on your screens as I speak. These are names of people who are wanted in India. They're almost all from Punjab, practically all from Punjab. They are not all Sikhs. Many of them are Hindu and one Muslim as well. They are wanted in India not just for terrorism. They are also wanted for drug smuggling, human trafficking, other crimes, bank frauds, things like that. They've all escaped to Canada because somehow Canada has become a safe haven for them. I'll read out some names for you and you will then see that these are not necessarily, first of all, these are not all Sikhs, and secondly, these are not all alleged terrorists. Lawrence Bishnoi, a gangster. Jasdeep Singh, Kala Jatheri alias Sandeep. Virendra Pratap alias Kala Ratna. Joginder Singh. So on and so forth. Then I come to some significant, there's a Mohammad Shahbaz Ansari. Then I come to some significant ones. Goldie Brar, gangster. Now Arshdeep Singh, he's also called Arshadallah. He has been operating from Canada and actually been brazenly claiming credit for murders, political murders in India. Congress party leader was killed in Moga just a couple of days back. So Arshdeep Singh Gill, he wrote a Facebook post actually giving his own reason for why. First of all, saying that he had got this man killed. Second, explaining why he had got him killed. Now, if Canada has all these people sitting there, what kind of liberal politics it is that they have to give refuge to all of these people? I don't understand. I leave it to your judgment. The fact is that at this point, India has 17 extradition requests pending in Canada, mostly concerning these people. They'll all feature in this list of sites. There are two other lists. There is a list of 10 that Amrinder Singh had given to Trudeau during his visit. Hardeep Singh Nijjar is in that list. After that, Government of India gave another list of seven gangsters from Punjab who are supposed to be sitting in Canada. That is Goldie Brar, Arshdeep Singh Gill alias Arshadallah, also known as Arshadallah. So the 7 gangsters are Goldie Brar, Arshdeep Singh alias Arshadallah, Ramandeep Singh, Lakhbir Singh alias Landa, Charanjit Singh alias Rinku Randhawa, Gurpinder Singh alias Baba, Sukhdul Singh alias Sukha Dunike. These were the gangsters. And then more, and now you have this list of consolidated list of that NIA is now put out. And the action is now strengthening to the extent that now you will see properties of many of these people. Almost all of them are charged under UAPA. And some are convicts, but most of the others are charged under UAPA, and UAPA has a provision where the state can confiscate the properties of those charged under UAPA, especially if those are absconding. We've seen this happen with Dawood Ibrahim's properties, and you've seen this happen with many of the radicals or separatists' properties in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Chances are, in fact, likelihood is most certainly this will happen, that NIA will now move to confiscate the properties of these people, even if they live in Canada, and maybe build their fresh properties in Canada. That is the state of play right now. Now, my 2-day absence. So I'd gone for a speaking commitment in Kurseong. Kurseong, as you know, is a very pretty tea garden town or overgrown village on way to Darjeeling. And from there, we took a couple of days off. One day to just walk around Darjeeling, next day to spend in Gangtok, and we went to Nathula. So you see this picture at Nathula, that is exactly at 0 point where the Indian and the Chinese borders are. This has been the only active border point between India and China where trade has been taking place. Unfortunately, and also for political reasons, trade was stopped because of COVID, has not been resumed since then. So you see the Indian gate with the Indian emblem, and right behind that the Chinese gate with the Chinese emblem. And if I enlarge this picture, you see those men in khakis, they are Chinese PLA soldiers. The other picture is of this very picturesque lake, Chongmo Lake, on way to Nathula. Lots and lots of tourists go there, which is a great thing. So I would suggest next time you plan a vacation, go to Sikkim, and among other things, go to Nathula as well. And Darjeeling, I went there after a long time. I might have gone there as a tourist when I was in college as part of a college excursion, but later to cover Subhash Ghee agitation at its peak in 1988. And I will share with you a link of the story I wrote on that agitation and the state of the region then for India today. This was a 1988 story. So please see that story in early 88. At that point, we were looking at an insurgency because there were bombings, automatic weapons were being used in attacks on police posts. Police posts were being burnt, and there were landmines, etc. Now the place is calm, fantastic. It is the cleanest hill station in the country. In fact, I'm afraid of talking about this, so more people will start going there. But yes, more people should go there for clean tourism. They've also maintained a lot of their old buildings and their heritage shops very well. And that's where you see this picture in this 1890 cafe and bakery called Glenaries. So once again, a hill town which has maintained cleanliness. It is the cleanest hill town by far, the cleanest hill station by far, but has also maintained a lot of its heritage. So I thought I will share some evidence with you so you know where I was and the reason I had disappeared for 2 days.